Excellent zoo, right? It's only 45 minutes away. Why build a whole other zoo? Well, we're going to look into why we did that. We're going to tell you what we're trying to accomplish and how you can help us accomplish that. And if I do everything exactly the way I want it to have happen, by the end of this tour, you're going to know what an ungulate is, and you're going to be able to look at any kind of ungulate and tell me what kind it is. So let's see if we can figure that out. How many of you saw a dog go running by over on the right-hand side?
Yes.
Who knows why there's a dog on exhibit? They're friends with the animals. It's definitely not an endangered species, right? The reason why there's a dog out there on that exhibit is because it shares the exhibit with a cheetah. And cheetahs get scared very easily. So the dog is their support animal. They raise them together, and the dog helps the cheetah to stay nice and calm so it can go do some pretty amazing things and visit with people. But what we really focus on here at the safari park are the kinds of animals you see over there on our left-hand side. Those are called ungulates. There's that fancy science word. I used it again. Does anybody know what an ungulate is?
Nope.
Okay, I'm going to tell you it's an animal that walks on a hard hoof. Does everybody know what a hoof is? Okay, so name an animal that walks on a hoof.
Zebra.
Zebras, that's a good one. Goat, sheep, cattle, deer, llama, guanaco, vacuna, alpaca, okapi, giraffe, horses, rhinos. It's a huge category of animals, and they don't breed very well in zoos. But they do breed very, very well here at the safari park. In a little bit, we're going to get into why that is. But I want to start off helping you to understand something that can be confusing to people. Sometimes people tell me the reason why they think the park is so successful is because we are so big. And we are a very large zoo. We're 1,800 acres in size. But size is not the reason we are successful. So I'm going to try to give you an example right now that will explain to you what I mean when I say size is not the answer. What do we see down here? What kind of birds are those?
Flamingos.
Flamingos. Now, you can be very honest with me. What's a little different about the way these flamingos look to how you might have expected flamingos to look? They're not super pink. And that's because these guys don't live in the nice warm waters of Florida or the Caribbean with a lot of plankton and all of that. They live in the Olduvai Gorge, in the Ngorongoro crater, where there are salt marshes. What color is salt when everything dries up? White. So you don't have as much plankton. You've got this white background, so being bright pink would just not be useful to these guys, would it? But they do get the pink color the way every other flamingo in the world does from the food they eat. But they concentrate it in their wing. So you see a little edge of it. There you go. When you open up this wing, did you see that bright pink? So they can show off and say, hey, I'm a flamingo when they need to. But the rest of the time, they can hide really well. And you see the ones with the black trim? Those are last season's babies. Now, here's the thing to know. We tried giving the flamingos lots of space. No babies. We had 150 of them. No babies. Now take a look at this picture. We knew that flamingos like to live together. You can pass that back so other people in the back can see it too. Wow. So we knew you had to have a lot of flamingos. 150, isn't that a lot of flamingos? Nope, they floated around. They looked pretty. No nests, no eggs. Once we put that fence up, they all congregated together, more like what's in that picture, and every season we get a couple dozen babies from them now. Wow. So space is not the answer. The things that make the ungulates want to breed, some of those conditions work better when there's more space. And it's the conditions, it's the things they can do that make them breed more for us, not necessarily the space itself. So here's what we're going to do. I'm going to take you to my absolute favorite view spot in the entire safari park. There's a little section where we can get out and kind of walk around, enjoy the view, take some pictures. But you'll notice I haven't told you yet why the safari park is so successful. And that's because I want to see if I can give you a chance to figure it out first. Now, the reason why I'm going to do that, I used to be a high school biology teacher. Now, one of the things I learned real quickly is if you just give out a bunch of information, people only remember it for a short period of time. In the case of high school kids, until the end of the test. But if somebody has to think about it, work it out, and get that excitement and that good feeling of figuring it out themselves, you remember it for forever. So we're going to try to do it that way, at least in this particular case. Is everybody flat on their bottoms?
Yes.
Okay, because this is where we're going to start journeying off the road. Now, the reason why zoos did not address this situation earlier is zoos were not originally built for animals. They were built for people. And so it's all about people having fun. And we still want you to have a lot of fun. But the idea of feeding cinnamon buns to the bears and peanuts to the elephants, that's kind of passé, because that kind of stuff turned out to not be all that good for the animals. And so as zoos began to understand that they needed to do things a little bit differently, and that you couldn't be taking animals out of the wild because the wild area was getting smaller all the time, That's when zoos started talking to each other, kind of the 50s and 60s, and they began to realize that nobody, absolutely nobody, not San Diego, not Philadelphia, not London, not Antwerp, nobody could get the ungulates to breed with any regularity. So our director then, Dr. Charles Schroeder, he sent researchers to Africa. He said, go watch these animals and come back and tell me what's going on in the wild that's not happening at our zoo. We're going to fix the San Diego Zoo. Well, the researchers came back with a lot of really good information. Dr. Schroeder looked at what they told him and went, I can't fix that. I'd have to pretty much remake the whole entire zoo. So, if I'm going to remake the zoo, I might as well just make a whole brand new zoo. And so that's what they did. And it took them a while to get it down, to get the support they needed and get the land that they needed. They brought the animals in 1969, and we opened up to the public on Mother's Day of 1972. Isn't that a great day to open on a breeding facility? Yeah. And instead of getting like 3 babies in a year like most zoos do, we get anywhere from 200 to 400 baby ungulates born every year. What do you think we do with all those kids? Do we keep them? Are we stockpiling ungulates?
No, loan them to other zoos.
Exactly. We give them away, we loan them, and we've actually sent animals back to the wild as well. But here's our getting out spot. Can you see how we made a little secondary fence here? Any place where you see that little secondary fence, you are welcome to get out. Stand right by that fence, but don't go around to the other side, because you might notice there's a little wire there. That fence is electrified. That's to keep out bobcats and coyotes and things like that. It would be a gigantic ouchie if you touch that. So stay on this side of the fence for me, and do avoid getting in the road. So really do stay over on this side. But get out, enjoy that view, and see if you can think of some reasons why these animals do a little bit better here as far as breeding goes than any other zoological.
Yeah, that one over there. No, this one, not this.
Huh?
Not this one, that one over there.
Is it this one, the electric fence?
No, the one, the second one.
See, I'll show you. I'm going to touch this one. See, this one's just fine. That one with a little wire across the top is the one you want to watch out for. But if we don't get on that side, it's not a problem.
Can anybody come in here and risk?
Oh yeah. In the early days, I've been here since 1984, and in the early days, they would come in and see all those little East African crown crane that are down there. Those birds are pinion. So one wing is shorter than the other one. They kind of fly in a circle, and the predators were smart enough to pick up on that, and they come in every once in a while and take those birds. But luckily, coyotes are pretty smart, and they learn from each other. And they'd come back and go, look at this ouchie, I got this from the fence, don't go in there, it's not as easy as it looks. We don't have much of a problem with that.
Not that over.
What if the coyotes,
What?
The girls, woohoo, fun times. What if you're not the stronger animal? You're not going to keep fighting and get hurt. You back off. I'm sorry?
your wheel chuck?
Oh, thank you, ma'am. I appreciate that. I've done about 2 more steps and I would have noticed it. Have you got it?
Yeah, the thing fall, right?
There you go. Thank you, ma'am.
Something here.
So as I say, so if you're the winner, that's great. And if not, you have to back off. You got to have a place to back off too. So in the wild, lots of places, right? Look at this exhibit. Just one exhibit is 60 acres. So if they're up at the top of the hill, they can back off to someplace else and be able to get out of the way. In a regular zoo, hey dude, didn't I beat you up yesterday? And you're still here. I will have to beat you up again. Boom. And you know if that happens too often, that little guy could get hurt, huh? So zoos aren't going to have multiple males. We have a whole off-exhibit area where we also keep our zebras, where we have additional males of all these different species, so that we can mix them and match them and move them around. Maintain genetic diversity is the fancy science word for that. Okay, who knows what we're looking at right down here on our left? This is a southern white rhino. This is kind of what we're known for. We're kind of known for our rhino ability. We were the first facility to be able to get these guys to breed with any regularity. And that's because most rhino species tend to live on their own, but this species clusters up. And scientists think the reason for that is because of the difference of predators. So who's your big predator in Asia? Try again.
Tigers.
Tigers. Who's your big predator in Africa? Lions.
Yeah.
Tigers are solitary. So the rhinos can afford to be a little bit more solitary because no tiger is going to mess with a rhino. However, a group of lions might mess with a rhino, but not if the rhinos are living in a group. See the difference? Okay, coming around the bend here, these are called Nile lechwe. About four or five of them right down here, another handful of them over here. Can you tell who's a guy?
The bigger horns?
Yeah, the girls don't have horns. The guys have nice big horns. Now, these are Ugandan cob. They're kind of sort of in the wrong exhibit. They should be in our Central Africa exhibit, but these are two males. So that's one of the ways that we're avoiding extra competition between those males by having them in a place where there's no girls. But back to the Nile lechwe. Notice that only the guys have horns. Whenever you're looking at a species of ungulate that's not a cow, I'm going to talk about cattle in just a little bit. Remember, our goal is to be able to look at these animals and figure out what kind they are. If you're looking at a species of ungulate that's not a cow, and the male and the female both have horns, that means you need them. You're living out in the open, where there's like, very little food, very little places to hide, so everybody needs to have a horn. But if you're looking at these animals and only the guys have horns, that means you don't need them. Because if you needed them, the girls would have them, and they don't. So they're just using them to show off. And you can kind of tell by the Nile lechwe. What do we know about the Nile?
Long.
Yeah, it's the biggest, longest river in Africa, right? It's going to be wet, it's going to be a lot of vegetation. So it makes sense that the Nile lechwe, only the boys will have horns. Let's see some more examples of that.
What's the encampment down here?
The buildings here, we call those bomas, B-O-M-A. That's a Swahili word that we believe was taken from a British acronym, British Officers Mess Area, a safe, secure place. And that's what they call the corral for the people that live in those areas to put their animals. So that's what we call our protected area. If you have an animal with a cut or a scrape, or it's going into quarantine, first-time mom, anybody's got a special need, we can put them into the boma for short periods of time where the keepers can observe them and take care of them and not have to try to follow them around out here in the big trucks. Now we are in our Central Asia or Eastern Asia area. I've got some maps here I want to pass back to you. They'll kind of help you understand. I originally made these for me because my geography is horrible, remembering all the different countries that are there. But guests expressed an interest, so I decided I would laminate them and have them. So this will show you the countries that are in Asia. Below that map will show you the habitat regions. So animals that need a lot of water, it's hard for us to get that moisture to them out here in Southern California. So those animals will be back in the village where we can control that. And the animals in the purple part where it gets super cold, what you're experiencing right now for Escondido is a chilly day, okay? It just doesn't get cold here. And so very few cold weather animals can do well. But if you look at the parts that are orange and yellow in those pictures, that's who we're going to be able to have a lot of out here. If you put your hand right down the middle, on the eastern side, you'll see that picture's in the center where the yellow and the orange is, so Central Asia. If you put your hand, why do you think she's there all by herself?
What? I mean, I don't know. Giving birth?
It has to do with preventing her giving birth. Now you might go, wait a minute, you just gave us this whole big spiel about how you're trying to breed all these animals and now you're going to prevent it? Well, her family lives on the other side, which means her dad is over there.
How sad.
And in the rhino world, the male does not stick around and help at all. So here's this cute girl. He doesn't know if she's related to him or not. So his natural instinct might be to breed with her, and that would not be a good idea. So what controls that is something called the SSP, the Species Survival Plan. And zoos all over the world send information to a central computer, the International Species Information System, and it analyzes who's related to who. So we're in a situation right now where next year, I don't decide these things, it's not up to me, but I am guessing that next year either her father, whose name is Bopu, will go live at another zoo where there will be females he is not related to because he's bred here several times. Or she will go to another zoo where there are boys that she's not related to. But one way or the other, that will be resolved. But in the meantime, she's in here to make sure she doesn't breed back with her dad.
But she's in here, but she's not restricted from going to... I mean, she can go
She can go anywhere she wants to go in this exhibit.
Right.
Her family's on the other side of the wall.
Got it.
So this is Eastern Asia, Western Asia. So Western would be like Nepal, India, Pakistan, Afghanistan, the Arabian Peninsula. So that's where all of these animals we're going to see on this side come from. With the exception of those Javan bantang, those very orange cattle you see over there, they are an Eastern Asian animal, but that's an animal really focusing on trying to breed them and get their numbers up. So we do have two different herds going on right now. Another greater one-horned rhinoceros down below us. We have a total of 7 of them on this side of the exhibit. A big adult male, I've already told you his name is Bopu. If we see him, I'll point him out. 3 moms and 3 babies of various ages that are in here with them. them. Remember what we said? Different predators, different reactions from the rhino. Unless it's a shared resource, like water on a hot day or something, you don't see the greater one-horned rhinos get quite as close to one another. For those of you that are terribly adventurous and you weigh between 70 and 300 pounds, you might know that big tower that cuts out the side. That's the rock side for our flight line. The longest continuous zip line in the contiguous United States, 2/3 of a mile up in the air, 2/3 of a mile long, and about 400 feet up in the air. Pretty impressive flight line.
Wow. I think this is a zip line.
Where does it end?
If you see where the balloon is,
Yes.
so a little
Oh,
ways
yeah.
in from
Sorry.
there. Not quite that far
Yeah.
out, but a little ways in from there.
Sorry.
So they drive you out there, and then you go on the line, and then you get out on your own when you're done with that.
Let's do it
But
next.
look at this animal who's here all by himself. Oh, that's sad. Any idea why he's all by himself? Well, the girls he's not real popular. Because remember we said what happens if you break your horn?
Oh, is it a broken horn?
Got a broken horn. They take a look, he's only got the one horn. Yeah. But that's okay because the other guy who thinks he's like really hot spit because he's still got both his horns, neither one of them know that they've been vasectomized and neither one of them are doing any breeding. So it's kind of an ironic thing. Now you might wonder, there's another weird thing. You just told us you want us to breed these animals and then you go and do that. That's because we've done a really, really good job of breeding the black buck. We've had over 1,200 of them born here. And exactly, you can have too much of a good thing, so you want to control all that. So every once in a while, some of our animals are breeding will be put on like a short hiatus for maybe one breeding cycle, 2 breeding cycles, depending on where those animals need to go, what breeds are asking for them, what wildlife concerns might be asking for them. So that is a guy that would live in the open grassland areas of India. So it is Indian black buck. Now the girls aren't black, there's no kind of tanning color. So he billboards with that color. He shows off with that color that he is indeed a male. This is my favorite antelope in the entire safari park. Look at their feet. See those little black and white circles down by their hoof? Nobody else has that. And there's that little mark that's behind their ears that somebody noticed, and the 2 little white spots on their face. Way back in 1984, when I first started working here, I hadn't heard of like half these animals. So I had to learn like everybody else, and you got to have a starting point. That was my starting point. So they're my favorite antelope, not because they're the fastest or the cutest, because they help me keep my job. There's a good solid reason. They are the largest of the antelope that you'll find in Asia. The largest ones in Africa are eland. And their name, nilgai, is a Hindi-based word, and it means blue bull. These guys, when they are mature, the males will have a steel gray blue color to them, and the girls will have kind of this orangish brown. Now that presents a question I want you to think about for a second. Why do the males look so different from the girls? Why doesn't everybody look the same? Now we mentioned that the guys want to stand out, so that's part of the answer to that. So why don't they look like a guy from the very beginning? Why doesn't a little boy look like a male on the day that he's born? Let me ask you the same question in a different way. What would happen to a little boy if he looked like a male on the day he was born?
Oh, that's amazing.
There you go. They go, well, this is a piece of cake. I could push you out a herd right now, and then I'll always get to be the herd sire. But genetically, that's not smart. And so nature keeps that from happening. Also, that male stood out to you, didn't he? He's going to stand out to a predator, too. And day-old baby boys don't run any faster than day-old baby girls. Everybody wants to look the same so you don't stand out to the predator. But then when it comes time to breed, you got to step up your game a little bit. So when the hormones kick in and that strength kicks in, you got a little more oomph to you, then you can afford to have that dark color and to billboard or advertise for yourself out in the wild. So more of the nilgai. Now, the nilgai are an antelope. So how do I know I'm looking at an antelope and not a deer or a goat or a sheep? Anybody got some ideas on that one? I tell it by process of elimination. If it's not a goat, if it's not a sheep, if it's not a deer, if it's not a cow, if it's not a goat, it's probably an antelope. So let's see how we figure out goats and sheep, and you'll see why I say that. So take a look over here on our right-hand side. What do you think we've got? Now, not the one close to the fence, because we know what he is. What is he? Right here. What is this?
A deer.
There's a deer. He's got antlers, right? It's called a sandbar deer. We'll get into detail about him in just a second. But up on the other side there, what are those little guys? Anybody got a theory? I'm going to give you a clue.
Goat?
Look, yeah, I was going to say, look on their chin. And what do you see growing down on their chin? Anything I pass back to you guys, when you're done looking at it, pass it forward, okay? So, what do you see growing on their chin? A beard. And what do you call it when you have a beard growing only on your chin? A goatee. So I don't know which came first, whether it was the word goat or the word goatee, but if you see an animal with a goatee, you are looking at a goat. Now, I find that the two animals that people are most likely to confuse are goats and sheep. And I think this is because people expect sheep to be woolly. Are all sheep woolly? Nope, only domestic sheep are woolly. It would be not very practical to have a lot of sheep if you're out there in the wild because you're going to get overheated, right? So I'm going to pass back two pictures so you can see what I'm talking about. One is a goat. You can very clearly see the goatee. That's the Turkoman markhor. That's what we have here. And the other is a sheep. See how it's got those ram horns? Ever seen the Dodge Ram commercial? Yeah, so those ram horns are going to help them to ram one another, knock each other down the hill, play king of the hill. So we'll pass those back. One thing that they have in common with each other, look how easily these guys are traversing those rocks. The outer part of the hoof is very hard. The inner part is very, very soft. So it smushes down and gives them good traction on the rocks. Most predators don't have feet that could do that. So these guys can climb up and down those rocks very, very well. And again, when you're all done looking at these, please just pass them around and bring them right back to me so I know that we're getting all those things back. You don't have to worry about coming back up to the front to hand them to me. Just pass them up.
Why are these kept outside of the other exhibit?
Ah, that's a lovely question. This is a little complicated, but I think you guys will get what I'm talking about. Where the animals are, any place in the world, you're going to have potential for parasites. Some animals that live in wetter environments have a better ability to tolerate these little parasites that might be in the greenery. Animals that live in a more arid region don't have quite as good defenses against that. Excuse me. So we want to exhibit our animals geographically by habitat. So animals that want a more arid type of region are going to be living up here in the hills where it's a little bit drier. We can control that kind of thing. And then the animals that have a wetter environment are going to be down below us. So the grasslands, forested, swamp kind of animals. Does that make sense, I hope?
Yes.
Okay, so that's the reason why. Sometimes you don't pick up on that difference because like this last month we got a lot of rains and everything's kind of looking the same. But that's the reason why we do this. Now this guy, for example, is called a sandbar deer. They like to live in swampy areas. He's going to find a low-lying area where the water is gathering and pee in it. And then he's going to take some antlers, he's going to mix up the water and the mud and the urine into a frothy mess, and then he smears it on a big rock and paints out his territory with snow. Most deer, though, it's much more visual. Look at the visual on this guy.
Ooh, look at that big thing.
Ooh,
Oh, Tucker.
that's some nice antlers, huh?
Holy
This guy is
moly.
called a white-lipped deer. Kind of looks like they stepped out of a Got Milk commercial, huh? And these animals would live in the areas around Tibet. Now, not up at the top where the Sherpas were, but down in the valleys and the grassy areas. But still, they like it a little cooler. So we give them shade structure and dig out little holes for them to get in and stand in the water when it gets hot. They're loving weather like this. But that antler will fall off, and the whole thing will grow back. Now, that's about the length of the average person's leg.
Wow.
It took you like 15 years to grow those legs. That falls off and grows back every year. That's why it's such an incredible measure to the female of the health and the vigor of that male. So they can use that to display and convince the female that they're the best one to breed with, and they get more points and times for them. So that convinces the male it's not the best for them. It's very, very good.
Look at that rhino's running.
And then this is the herd sire for the black buck. Look how he walks. Does he walk like he owns the whole place? Yes. So this is Mr. Boku. His name is Hindi based, and it basically translates into man who toots his horn. He tends to wear that horn down. It actually grows about 3 inches a year, but he wears it down. Does anybody know what part of your body is made out of the same thing as that rhino's horn is made out of? Yeah, your fingernails, your hair, also horse's hooves, snake scales, bird feathers. So it's really kind of just a cheap protein that's very easy to get. But unfortunately, there are cultures that have believed for thousands of years that if that keratin comes from a rhino, then it's magical, medicinal. It's going to lower your blood pressure, take away a headache, make you sexy, cure cancer. It's not going to do any of those things. If I grind up my toenails and put it in a bowl, and we grind up his horn and we put it in a bowl, and you take a spoonful of each, when it hits your stomach sees that both of exactly the same thing. But because rhinos are becoming more and more endangered, the value of that ground up horn is going up and up and up. Back in 'cause you're not going to pay $1,000 a gram for something that's my toenails, right? Nobody's going to do that. And then the other thing we need to do is to create a world where people can get a decent job and not be brought in by the cartels and the illegal sources that are going after this stuff. It's a big business now. It's not just somebody going out there and taking like that. Now, we are coming up to an area where you are welcome to get off my cart. Just a couple things I want you to keep in mind. I want you to stay in the area that's open. There's a little pipe with a little white cap on it. Don't go any further than that. Don't go any farther in the other direction than past this gate. And I think we can all fit in this little space right here. And then watch out for your fingers, because from a horse's point of view, your fingers look an awful lot like carrots. And I am going to toss them some carrots to you. That's the reward for coming down. This is one of the few animals we have here that do come from a cold environment. These guys come from the Gobi Desert. Anybody heard of that before? Have you heard of the population of people called the Mongols? Yes. Mongols. So way back in the early days, don't go away, guy. Back in the early days, this is an animal that was domesticated by the Mongols to a degree. There are still wild populations. The chromosome number is completely different from domestic horses, but you can see it is indeed a horse. Now, one of the differences is that the Przewalski's horse wouldn't look like this if you saw it in the wild. It would be shaggy and it would be fat. Do you see anything else about it that's different from a standard domestic horse?
The coloring is...
That there's no like
there's
spots.
more colors.
Yeah, they're all the same color, like they're little carbon copies of each other. This is so that predators don't pick any one animal out. You got to be weak and slow and something about you to pick you out. So they all look very much the same, very uniform. Look at the size of their hooves. They're huge hooves. The bigger your hoof, the slower you're going to be. So one of the things that people changed when they began to domesticate the horse was the hoof got smaller. But I think the big thing you notice, the mane, right? Mm-hmm. Okay, so imagine you are the first Mongol to figure out that you could ride a horse. Nobody's invented a saddle. Nobody's invented a bridle. How do you keep from falling off? You might hold on to that mane. Or you might lean over and wrap your necks around and, arms around the neck like that. In which case, you've either got a handful of scratchy hair or you got scratchy hair up against your neck. But given any group of plants, animals, or people, there's going to be differences. Taller, shorter, lighter, darker, cuter, softer. If you find a horse with a soft mane, don't barbecue that one. Okay, let it grow up and have babies. And little by little, by selective breeding, which is the process of domestication, you change the animal so that we now have a completely different animal that is our domestic horse. Now, these guys got in trouble because of World War II. Anybody got an idea? What do you think happened during World War II? No ideas? Times are hard.
They use these as travel?
Might have used them for
travel.
There you go, you got it. They ate them.
Oh,
The reason why the Mongols worked with these guys originally was in order to be able to have food. It wasn't to ride them. That idea didn't occur to them until much later. It was so they could eat them. Alrighty? So did I see Sasha just warning somebody about fingers through the fence? What did we say when we got off the cart?
Carrots.
Yeah, keep your fingers on this side.
Yeah.
So what was I saying? So they
What if they
during
eat
World War II,
fingers?
when times were hard, there were blockades out there on the coast. People moved inland and they ate these guys. And by the end of World War II, there were only 32 of them left.
Oh my God.
They have been doing a very concentrated program with these guys using that big computer that I told you about and are building their numbers up. But wait a minute. Can I take that animal and put it in the wild?
No.
No, because living here in Escondido, can you see how the fence bows out?
Yeah.
They've rubbed against it. They've gotten all that excess fur off. They don't have as much fat on their bodies. They acclimated to living in Escondido. So I can't put that animal in the Gobi Desert. So we don't do that. We have partners around the world. Zoos work together. And we send these animals to Kyrgyzstan and we send them to Zurich. Nice cold places. And they acclimate the animals to the cold. And then when they have babies, those are the ones that go to contribute to the program to try to build these guys back up. Any questions about Przewalski's horses before we move on?
Close he is.
Has anyone had the fingers of any of the guests?
No, but that's why we watch you. You're a troublemaker.
Yes, absolutely.
I'd like to know what submitted.
No. Okay, everybody hop on board. Maybe. It's not like a woo, but it's a right. Very deep sound. On the little babies, look, it makes squeaky sounds.
You don't have to hold me since I'm warm.
I know. Okay, now there's two kinds of camels. Bactrian camel.
પાર્ટીશન કેવું લાગે છે બોડી પર
Oh my gosh.
સ્કિન કેવું લાગે
Ooh, look at that.
So the dromedary camel has one hump and lives in hot deserts like the Sahara Desert.
That's really
The Bactrian camel has two humps and lives in cold deserts like the Gobi. So since we know this is our Gobi exhibit, that should be Bactrian camels. Where's the other hump?
It's tiny.
It looks like it's a one and a half hump species. There's no such thing. So these are Bactrian camels doing impersonations of dromedary camels. And the dromedary camel only needs the one hump because when you metabolize fat, and that's what's in a camel's hump, it's going to make hydrogen atoms and water molecules. But if you're living with cold, you need a little extra fat for insulation. There's a good side view.
No kidding.
So you need the hydrogen, the water, and the fat. But we're living in Escondido. It doesn't get cold. So you don't see those big layers of fat. In fact, this guy, if you take a look at him, let's see which one is which. Over here. It's so flat down. Eli was born in San Diego. He's never experienced a cold day in his life. Mouse, when she came here, actually had a little bit more fat in that hump. She came from a place where it actually got cold in the wintertime. But little by little, she's losing that fat as well. So these are Bactrian two-hump camels. The Bactrian camel is having a little bit more trouble out in the wild than the dromedary. So that's why we have a pair of them. If you have a dromedary camel named Susie, that you might see if you go on a tram.
Brush in.
Everybody bear with me while I turn this around. And you see some cattle there in front of us. See how the male is very black and the girls are kind of orange? Now, I told you cattle were kind of an exception to that horns on, horns off rule. And that is because wild cattle, no matter what kind of habitat they live in, male and female will both have horns and the horns will curve inward. Now, not back like on sheep, but inward, like a big circle on the top of your head almost. Here's the reason why they do that. Has anybody seen a really good John Wayne movie? Somewhere in the course of that movie, you're going to hear one of the cowboys going, "Look out, because the cattle are doing what? Stampeding." When cattle get frightened by something, they don't scatter. They come together as a dynamic force, and they will trample danger into the ground. And the ability for that to get you somewhere and have a good result requires that everybody gets really close together. Are you going to get close to somebody who pokes you in the eye? Probably not. So their horns curve inward. Now you might be thinking,
Sorry, we lost the water.
that's okay. Everybody stay where you are. I'll go get it.
Sorry about that.
So you might, no, that's okay. You're not the first person that's ever happened to. So you might be thinking, well, wait a minute. I've seen some animals that didn't have any horns on them at all. You've probably seen domestic cattle that didn't have any horns. And that's because we bred it out of them so that it's easier for us to deal
No,
with.
you don't need right now.
But the animals that are out in the wild still need to have that ability. Who does this go to? You guys? No, that's okay. Like I said, you're
The
not
big
the
girls
only
in
person
the
this ever
yard.
happened to. In fact, that's why I mentioned it at the very beginning of the tour, because that can happen so easily. Alrighty, back to what we were talking about. So the cattle, they're on caravan. These are called Javan Banteng, and they would actually live in kind of a tropical situation. Here's a little trick of the trade to know when you live in a very green habitat, how much orange there is on the animal's body. The more orange you see on their body, the greener the habitat that animal lives in. Now that might not make a whole lot of sense to you at first, because I'm going to show you a picture with a very, very orange animal in a very green habitat. And I'm going to tell you it's hiding. Now if you look at that picture, does it look like it's hiding to you? But look on the other side. You have very good color vision because you are a diurnal animal. Light hits things, bounces off, and gives you good color vision. In order to have light, you got to have color for light, right? But predators go hunting when? Nighttime, not a lot of light. Therefore, there's not a lot of color. So it would be evolutionarily not very smart to develop the ability to do something that you can't do anyway. There's no light. So predators, by and large, don't have very good color vision. So just like that grass got gray when you're looking at it in the shade, that animal's body, that's orange, is going to get gray when you're looking at it in the shade. And that picture shows you how difficult it is. Look on the color one, and you can see the edge of the animal's body really well. But look at the grayscale one, and the edge disappears. If they put its head down, you wouldn't know it was there.
Is there a place to go side by side?
Another protection that these big rhinos have, besides their big size, is how thick their skin is. See how that folds over?
Yeah.
Very typical on a greater one-horned rhinoceros. I'm going to pass back a piece of freeze-dried rhinoceros skin. Again, when this gets to the last row, please turn it around and pass it forward for me. I want you to feel the bumps and get a sense of how thick it is. It's been
That's
freeze-dried.
the rhino
We took all the moisture out of that. So when you take all that water out, it's going to have that hard feel to it. But imagine if we put all the water back in. It's going to be way thicker than it is right now. And that's going to be really hard for a predator to get through. Also, all those bumps on the top, if this animal rolls around in the mud, it's going to make that dry. And it's going to be very hard for mosquitoes and ticks and that kind of thing to get through and hurt the rhino. Now, unfortunately, the vast
that is
majority of rhinos, of this kind of rhino, the southern white rhino on the planet today, are in a reserve in one area in India. At least 80% of all the one-horned rhinos that are left on our planet are from that one area. And they had a really bad flood in recent years. And that really affected their population. We lost a lot of rhinos. So we are trying to support not just what you see here at the safari park, but we're involved in helping all of these groups around the world. In fact, I'm going to pass a picture back to you that shows you just some of the different places that we are dealing with, so you can kind of get an idea. 140 different research projects in 80 different countries around the world to try to support the kinds of animals that we have here that are also living out in the wild. Now, I stopped here for two reasons. One, I want to give the other card a chance to go by, but also you can see the oryx better from this side. So if you take a look up above us on the left-hand side, that's the Arabian oryx. Very white in color. They're really standing out to you, aren't they? That's because this is an animal that doesn't have to worry too much about hiding from a predator because they run super fast. And there aren't very many animals that are up in that part of the world that can run as fast as the oryx can. But the babies can't run that fast. And you're not seeing as dramatic an example now as you would have a couple months ago. But those little babies were a tan color. You see a little bit of it still in their shoulders and in their legs. Mom would hide or tuck them away instead of asking them to come with her. And then that way the predator's not going to notice them. But when they get older, they're going to get that white color because their other problem is the sun. And that white coloring is going to make the sunlight bounce off. Now, they are one of my favorite conservation stories in all the world. What happened is after World War II, the young Bedouin men who had been hunting Arabian oryx from the back of camels with bows and arrows, it was very difficult, began to find it very easy because machine guns and jeeps got left behind. And conservation groups realized that their population was declining. They took several of them, a very large quantity, to the Phoenix Zoo. At one time, their numbers were, I believe, as low as 9 to the Phoenix Zoo. Meanwhile, all of this is still going on in the Arabian Peninsula. The population is dropping, and so they're gone. phoenix is breeding them, getting the population up. But they're realizing, that adage, don't put all your eggs in one basket. You've got all these animals that are going to be pretty closely related to each other. If a bad disease comes through, it could wipe out your whole herd. So they're looking for other places that will take them. This is happening in like the 60s and the 70s. A gentleman who lived in the Middle East wrote to the World Herd and said, basically, this is paraphrasing because I've never seen the actual letter. He basically said, well, I was scared because the young men were killing these animals, and you came in and took the animals, and the population kept... So what I did was I kept some. And mine have had babies. Should we put our babies together? And that was exactly what we needed for them to do to get them past the genetic bottleneck. And for a long time, we were releasing these animals out into the wild. We were a little bit hesitant to do that on the same level